Okay, I'm going to divide up my my good watercolor paper for my drawing. I already divided up my portrait, as you may have seen in the previous video, at 1/2 of an inch, and I used a color pencil so that it would be easy for me to see it on the picture. On my big paper, that's 9 by 12, I'm going to be using a traditional number 2 pencil and drawing really lightly. I have my measuring skills sheet here that has all the measurements that I need, because I already counted by 3/4 of an inch, which is the measurements that we're going to be using here on our paper. One way I can make sure that I'm on track is that I know that if I don't hit the number 3, 6, 9, or 12 as I'm going, right, and I haven't run out of paper, then I have a problem and I need to go back and double check. So if you pass that number on your ruler and you haven't made a mark there, then you may have a measuring issue. I am going to measure from the same side of my paper each time. So I'm going to line up my 0 with the edge of my paper over here. And I am going to start marking every 3/4 of an inch. I have my my paper right here, which will help me. So I'm going to start with 3/4, and I'm just going to put a little light mark there, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, and then I should land on 3. And now I'm going to go to 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/4, and I should land on 6. And then 6 3/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/4, and 9. And 9 3/4, 10 1/2, and 11 1/4, and 12 is on the end of the paper. Okay, now without rotating my paper, I'm going to move my ruler up to the top of my paper, or closer to the top where it is for me, and I'm going to mark those measurements again, right? And I can use my chart to help me if I need to. So I'm going to start at 3/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, 3, 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/4, 6, 6 3/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/4, 9, 9 3/4, 10 1/2, and 11 1/4, and 12 should be at the edge of my paper. Now I can use those measurements to connect them lightly with my pencil, and I'm only going to connect my outside ones right now because these measurements give me a border around the image that I'm going to be working on. So I'm going to do these two first, and then I'm going to turn my paper and measure going the other direction so I know how wide to make my measurements. Okay. Now I'm going to measure across this bottom line, and then I'm going to measure across the top line, and then I can use my measurements to connect all the parts of my grid. So I'm going to start with 0 on the edge of the paper and mark 3/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, 3, 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/4, 6, 6 3/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/4, and the edge of my paper is 9, so I don't need to mark that. Now I'm going to move my ruler up here and do the same. 0's on the edge. I'm close to my line. I'm marking 3/4 of an inch, 1 1/2, 2 1/4, 3, 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 1/4, 6, 6 3/4, 7 1/2, 8 1/4, and 9 is at the edge of my paper. Now I can connect the edge of each of these dots so that I have my border. So I'm going to connect this one down to the one here just inside my line, and over here that first one as well. And now I can connect all of my connecting lines. And so I'll start working on that. You want to make sure that you accommodate for the width of your pencil and you keep it nice and sharp. So make sure that your pencil lands on the marks before you start drawing in your lines. I'm going to land my pencil on the mark and on my mark. And I'm going to keep going until I go all the way down the page. And I'm drawing very lightly so that I can erase my lines if needed while I'm drawing, right? Sometimes you'll be able to fill in enough that the line will disappear on its own with dark enough tones. Sometimes you're going to need to erase it to have it disappear as you work on really, really light areas. I'm just going to keep going all the way down my paper. All right, and now I can connect going this direction as well.
Coach Murphy, please give me a call on my cell. Coach Murphy.
All right, and now I can letter across and number down. I'm going to write them very lightly and not super big so that I can erase them later. I should go from A to J and 1 to 14. And now that I have that gridded, and I have this gridded, I'm ready to start drawing. I can move square by square all the way across. You could go squares down and move across. If you're going to go square by square, pay attention to if you're left or right-handed. If you're left-handed, you probably want to start on this side and work across backwards so that you don't smear any of your graphite. If you're right-handed, you'll want to start up here and work across like you would in written paper, right? I hope that helps.